All right, I'm going to get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany White. I am the project manager for the Loretto Heights project for this round of renovations. And I work with the Denver Parks and Rec. We have a couple other staff members from DPR on with us as well. Anna Claudia is our planner for the West Side, and Jesus is our communications specialist. We also have Livable City Studios with us. They are our consultant for this project and will be introducing themselves here in a little bit. Right now, we're going to have a language statement, and then after the language statement, we're actually going to turn over to Councilman Flynn's office here. We'll go ahead with the language statement.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us here. Hello, my name is Viria Sosa, and I am here with the Communal Language Co-op, and we are here to help create a space for language justice. What that means is that we want to create a space where everyone can participate and engage in the language of their heart or the language that they feel most comfortable in. We will use simultaneous interpretation to create this space. When I finish saying this in Spanish, we will turn on interpretation and you will see a globe icon that says interpretation. If you are not fully bilingual, we ask that you select your preferred language. If you are bilingual, feel free to listen to everyone in their language. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Viria Sosa y estoy aquí con la Community Language Co-op y estamos aquí para ayudar a crear un espacio donde todos puedan, donde se practica la justicia del lenguaje. Lo que esto significa es que queremos crear un espacio donde todos puedan participar e involucrarse en el idioma de su corazón o en el idioma en el que se sientan más cómodos. Usaremos la interpretación simultánea para crear este espacio. Cuando termine de decir esto, activaremos la interpretación y verá un icono de globo que dice interpretación. Si no es completamente bilingüe, le pedimos que seleccione su idioma preferido. Si es bilingüe, puede escuchar a todos en su idioma. Cuando seleccione su idioma, puede seleccionar en silenciar el audio original para que no escuches ambos idiomas al mismo tiempo. Thank you very much. Please go ahead and turn on interpretation. Muchas gracias. Gracias. Vamos a comenzar con la interpretación.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Flynn. Thank you, Councilman, for joining us.
Thank you, Vidia. I want to welcome everybody to this meeting. I am here to listen and hear what the ideas are of the community. It's good to see some longtime active folks from the area who are here. Tara, I see David also, Limbrol, a few others. Also, Stacy Simonet is my aide in my council office, and she is here also as a member of the steering committee. One thing that I want to say is it's been wonderful to introduce this process to the community because folks have been contacting me who've been using this area for such a long time. And one of the wonderful memories I got in my email from someone was they remember when this was a farm. And in fact, that area was part of what was called Fair Hills Farm. And there were horse stables there. And they remembered actually riding some of the horses in the area before it got developed when it was the west side of the Loretto Heights campus. So things change, things grow. There are more people living down here now and more people are coming. And what you end up designing here will become their park. So thank you for being part of this process. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you so much. I did not know that about Fair Hills Farm. I like that. It's a little bit of trivia. Thank you for sharing.
Very cool.
Can we go ahead to the next slide, please? Okay, so just a couple virtual meeting instructions and reminders. Please keep on mute if you are not speaking. We encourage you guys to use the chat. So please use the chat while we are going through our presentation and then later on for the Q&A. And we'll do a mix of you know, if you want to raise your hand and speak with your camera on, we can call on you, or we can just answer your questions in the chat, whatever you're more comfortable with. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. So really quickly, we'll go over the meeting agenda. So this is the welcome. We're going to talk about the meeting objectives. Then we're going to go through the project scope and schedule. So that's really the meat and potatoes of what we want to talk about today and present to you guys and engage with the community on the project scope and schedule that we have here. But then we'll also look at the existing conditions of the park, which I know many of you will be familiar with and look at some site analysis and where our opportunities are. And then we'll talk about next steps. So I already mentioned we have a second public meeting coming up. And we're also going to talk a lot about a survey that we want you guys to take so we can get a lot of your feedback that way as well. So we'll talk about all that good stuff. Okay. Next slide. Thanks. So meeting objectives. Basically, what we want to talk about today is we want to hear from you. So this is our first opportunity to engage the community around Loretto Heights. And we want to hear what your experience is in the park. We want to hear about how you guys are using the existing playground and shelter and other amenities in the park. And we want to know what concerns you guys or what you see as opportunities as well. And then I already mentioned the survey. So we have an online survey that we would love for everyone here tonight to take, as well as to pass along to anybody who has an interest in this park project. The survey is really quick. Just a general overview, and we'll kind of go through a lot of those same questions today. So we want you to take the survey, and then we'll also have the survey posted on our website, and it's posted in the park as well in little yard signs. So lots of different ways to get to that. And with that, I'm going to dive into the scope and schedule.
Excuse me, Mom. How do we do the survey?
So we'll send you guys a link. So basically there's a few ways you can get to it, but we have a QR code and a link that we'll share with you guys. So this is an overview. You should be seeing like an arrow of the park. So one of the biggest pieces of the scope here that we want to tackle is the irrigation system. So I know that that's not super fun, but you can see here in this aerial how important irrigation is. We don't get a lot to grow in this climate without it. And with this particular site, which has a variety of challenges, including slope, we want to be very careful how we use every drop of water that gets allocated to this site. So you can probably guess which parts of the site currently are getting irrigated and which ones are not. It's about a 14-acre site, and we're currently irrigate about 7 of those acres. So that's going to be a big part of this project, is replacing the system, getting it more efficient, and then really addressing how we use that water. Just really can't be stressed enough, because that is a very important thing to our city as overall and to our park system. In addition to the irrigation system, we're also going to look at the playground and the shelter. And so with those, we're going to ask you a lot of questions about how you guys use them right now, what you think about their location, all of that good stuff. But we know that, there's a lot of opportunities there to make those amenities better. And that's what we're really going to be focused on. So can you go to the next slide, please? So here's a rough breakdown of our project schedule. So you can see the we are here. So this is our first public meeting. And from this point until May 3rd, so you can think about the end of the month, we're going to have that first survey open. And basically ask questions about, the playground and shelter. There's some really fun images that you can choose from for both the playground and the shelter that kind of give us an idea of what aesthetic or like what look the community would like. So I think those are some of the most fun questions on there. So definitely take a look and provide your feedback. And then you can see we're going to kind of do this all over again. We're going to start with a steering committee meeting, have a second survey, and do a second public meeting. And basically the purpose of those two is we're gathering a lot of information now, and then we're going to tell you guys what you told us, and tell you, what we heard and how we're going to put that into action. So with that, I'm going to turn over to our consultants, Livable City Studios, who have done a fantastic job so far, and I cannot wait to see what they do from here. So I'm going to turn it over to Will. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Brittany. So first, I think I'll just kind of introduce myself. Will Beatson with Livable Cities, landscape architect and project manager for the design team for this project. Also with our team today, we have Todd Wenskoski, principal of our firm. And yeah, I'm going to walk you through some observations, on the site. Here, we'll kind of first look at the surrounding neighborhood. So you can see our site here shown kind of in the green shape in the kind of center to the right. Our park is adjacent to a number of services in the neighborhood, existing places of worship, as well as a future development for the Loretto Heights campus. So the west side of our park is South Lowell Boulevard, which ties through Harvey Park South neighborhood and into Harvey Park North from 285. And then on the east side of our site is South Irving Street. The general character of the neighborhood is urban residential. And the Loretto Heights campus is actually undergoing ongoing site development for future affordable mixed-use housing and some other exciting programs. So our current park essentially is, as Brittany mentioned, comprised of 3 areas. The center sort of section is irrigated, and it consists of recreational lawn spaces, the pavilion, as she mentioned, an existing playground, and then some other kind of connecting paths that tie South Irving Street and move through south to Lowell Boulevard. Primary side at the sort of parking lot that is located there, and then there are kind of core primary sidewalk loops or hard concrete surface trails that run through the center of the park. On the north and south sides of the park, the non-irrigated spaces are really short grass prairie naturalized landscape areas, and their activation is a little more limited, but they do provide soft surface trails for walking, jogging, and kind of strolling. So also what is shown here on this diagram are existing kind of park lights and street lights. So there is street lighting along South Lowell Boulevard as well as Irving Street itself. And then lighting within the park is somewhat limited, and it's kind of associated with the primary circulation routes. So what we'd like to do is look at some of the existing conditions to talk about opportunities here. And so this is where we're kind of studying the site and doing site analysis. So this first diagram that's shown is looking at access and connectivity. So I described the location of the parking lot on the west side along South Lowell Street. That is the only vehicular access to the site. There is a service kind of route that operations and maintenance staff for Denver Parks use cutting through the site. That's sort of the main path that moves north and east to the northeast corner of South Irving Street past the pavilion. There is not public vehicular access through the park. You can see in this diagram as well, the pavilion itself and playground are centrally located, and the pavilion is available for rental and is currently actually a well sought after and highly rented space in the Denver Park and Rec sort of library of facilities. And so one of the challenges I think with the site today is the location of the pavilion relative to parking. Since it's dead center in the site, it's hard to, if you rent the facility, bring a equipment or coolers or even food to the structure itself. So that's one thing that I think we'd like to talk through. Additionally, what's shown in the orange are kind of the main, the thicker line is the main circulation route, 8-foot wide concrete that runs through the site. But then the smaller, thinner orange lines on the north and south sections of the site are just soft surface trails. And lastly, I think it's important to highlight there are existing bike facilities, Shero facilities on South Lowell Boulevard to the west. And in the future on Irving Street, there will be a bike facility that runs Irving all the way and tying into Harvey Park North. So there's kind of a lot going on from a circulation perspective, but a lot of ways to access the site currently. So on the northwest, the entrance is actually a protected and kind of safe crossing where there's an area of refuge and an island. And this ties into the northwest corner of the site. The northeast corner, which is the vehicular kind of access route as well as a pedestrian entry, this actually doesn't tie into a crosswalk and is a little unassuming and unannounced. So there is a concrete connection here, but it moves through naturalized landscape and there's no signage and there's limited kind of announcement or arrival markings. On the southwest corner by the parking lot, you can see this is where it really serves today as a primary entry for the park. And there's the park signage, Loretto Heights Park, and then it's oriented towards vehicular access as sort of the primary connection. So if you're approaching the site from Lowell and you're moving north along the attached sidewalk, you actually have to enter, if you're going through the parking, you don't have a sidewalk to kind of connect here. There is a connection further south, but it's a little kind of confusing. And then on the southeast, you can also see it's a little not well marked. There's a trash can, but there's no signage, and there's street lighting, but with the existing vegetation, it's hard to tell, exactly what point in the park you're approaching. Then on the east side at South Irving Street, this future connection with the Loretto Heights campus, as I mentioned, there's a great deal of development and new housing and other programs that are currently under construction, and interior to the site, there are infrastructure and roads, and there will be a primary entry for the campus itself that will tie into South Irving and also address our parks. So the future connection, though this is a very preliminary kind of sketch, is that there would be sort of a safe crossing, some sort of area of refuge in the center, and really safe markings, because there's actually, as you are on Irving Street, there's kind of a crest, and it's limited in visibility right now for pedestrians crossing. It's hard for vehicles to see them as they come over the hill and approach that. Then the playground and the shade structure portion of the site, really in the center, they're located at essentially the high point of the site, and the pavilion is really the true high point, and they offer some of the best views in the park system of all of Denver, looking west and sort of southwest. And you can see there's some existing infrastructure to kind of hold and retain the grade. There's a retaining wall that kind of separates the connecting path from for the playground from the pavilion. And the way that the grading in this area works is that there's 5 or 6 feet of differential between the pavilion and the playground, and they're also horizontally separated pretty good distance. So what that kind of equals is it limits your ability to use the playground and also occupy the pavilion at the same time. Now, this could be a benefit if the pavilion is rented. Then The playground itself, you know, doesn't conflict with that program and vice versa. However, it also leads to what's out there today, is that there's strictly seating under the pavilion, shaded seating, and then there's no seating provided around the playground whatsoever. So in various site visits, and if you spent time at the park, you can often find you know, parents and families congregating on the southeast corner of the playground, just seeking shade under these existing trees. Additionally, there are some picnic table locations that are sort of spread across the lawn area. And then there is a single kind of grill that's accessible on the west side of the pavilion. The last thing that I want to point out kind of on this slide is you can see there are a couple different approaches to the pavilion itself, pathways. And that is because the grade in this area, since the pavilion's on the high point, it's actually somewhat inaccessible in its original connection from the core or main concrete kind of trail. And so later, there was a secondary connecting accessible path that was added. And again, there's no connection from the pavilion to the playground. So it's not very accessible, you know, at this point. And a lot of improvements could be made simply just by working through circulation and thinking about how the spaces connect to each other. So this slide shows a couple photos of the existing shade structure. You can see it's pretty wide. It's I think it's a hexagon, but it is wide enough and generous enough that it has 4 kind of picnic tables that are always in the shade and a couple others. And then there's a large pad that has some cracking and some other issues with it. And there's also an irrigation controller. But other than that, it's a pretty bare bones facility. Again, the largest benefit of this structure and its location today are really the views that are afforded looking to the south and to the west. And that's why it's consistently rented throughout spring, summer, and fall. Additionally, you can also see the playground in the background here, and this kind of speaks to the separation between the 2 programs that I mentioned before, and the limited seating or really any opportunities for shade around the edge of the playground itself. So what we'd like to do at this point is actually ask a few questions and respond and have you respond in the chat. So the first question, and we'll take, maybe I should briefly describe this. We'll take 2 to 3 minutes to kind of gather some feedback, and then we'll walk through sort of the responses at a high level. And then we'll kind of move to the next prompt. And for the shade structure itself, we have 3 questions. And then actually for the playground, we have 2, so 5 in total. So the first question is just pretty straightforward. What do you like or dislike about the current shade structure? And I'll just kind of pause here. And then I'll also mention Todd in our office will kind of monitor the chat. So looking forward to hearing your responses, and yeah, we'll kind of go through them as they come in.
Yeah, I think there's some great feedback coming in. Said first, the view is spectacular. That's a big one for a number of comments in there, and then the location of it as well. Yeah, people, it seems to be sited in the right location based on the feedback coming in. Some people are saying additions elsewhere would help, but that location seems to work well. See what else you got, Gregor. Yeah, there's comments similarly about no connectivity to the playground. lot of support for keeping it in that location. There's a comment, there's something the teams discuss, which says, not that it matters, but people do drive up there when they rent it to load and unload. And that's a great comment. That's something we've already talked about with the parks team.
I also will add that our operations supervisor is attending the meeting tonight, and she's very, I'm sure, happy to hear all this discussion about an issue that's ongoing for them. I
Okay,
also just
yeah.
wanted to point out, sorry, Will, we had a Spanish language question early on from John James, I believe. Can we just make sure that's interpreted? And we're addressing that. Thanks.
Was that very at the very beginning, Brittany?
Yes.
That may have been one of the Zoom bomb attendees.
Oh, okay, just making sure.
That-
Obviously, I
Okay.
can't read.
It's not a question, Brittany.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. This is great feedback. And it sounds like a lot of you have enjoyed the view out there and some good afternoons and some nice sunsets. It's a really spectacular amenity and yeah, as I mentioned, I think one of the best in all of Denver and in the park system, alongside the LA kind of linden trees and crab apples. It's a really fantastic view. So I'll go to the next question, which I think a lot of you already started to respond to, but does the location of the shade structure feel appropriate?
While people are answering to this one, Will, there was a question earlier. I'll try to go back. Will the northwest corner be included in the revamp? I don't know if you or Brittany want to respond to that one.
Brittany, do you want to take that?
I can. So as part of this project, we would love to hear what your thoughts are on that northeast side. However, we probably will not have the funding with this again to address that area. It wasn't identified as part of this project, but I understand it's lacking some programming. So, and there's lots of fun things that we could put in there. So we definitely want to hear everybody's feedback, but it's probably not something we can address with this project.
Great.
I did notice a comment here from David on the location. Are you thinking of moving the location for better accessibility? I think just to kind of expand on that, David, I think accessibility is absolutely one consideration. I think sort of access from the road and sort of event or rent use. So I think that's another thing that's not really accessibility from a universal access point, but it is you know, a consideration here. So I think one of the challenges I would say is that, you know, the high point of the site is really the center of the site, which is how I think the structure slope was landed there and also was built up a little bit. But I think that's we're hearing mixed viewpoints, I guess, on what should be a driver for the location.
Yeah, there are also some good comments here about suggestions to look at maybe a second pavilion. Good thoughts there as well. That one.
Perfect. And while we're still getting a few more comments there, I'll just we actually had another question. I guess we have 3 questions on the playground. So let me just do a quick scan and see if there were any other comments we did not address.
There is one question here. It says side not included in the revamp. Will it get water? So Lynn, I don't know if it's okay to maybe go off mute for a minute and clarify that one. There's Lynn Broll, if you're comfortable.
I wonder if she means the northeast side that we've been talking about.
Yeah, maybe. She says, sure, will it have sprinkler access? Okay.
Without knowing exactly where you're talking about, Lynn, I can try to attempt to answer that, which is that we don't know exactly yet where each drop of water will go, but that's what we're looking at. And we really want to be careful how we allocate those precious resources. So unsure yet. And I think the programming of that space should dictate it.
Thank you. I just wanted, since you said there's a part that wasn't going to be in the funding, I just wanted to know if maybe it was going to at least get some water. So thank you for trying to answer that for me.
Okay, and then there is one other comment here. In the winter, the pathways could be plowed more often. Ice accumulates on the walkways on the northwest side. Not sure if that was mentioned, but that's a good comment considering we're talking about site access and the accessibility. So,
And great comment there about the tree line. So we're going to talk about that. Will's going to talk about that in a little bit.
perfect. So now let's kind of talk a little bit about the playground. So just east. This again is 5 or 6 feet lower than the existing structure we were just looking at. The shot on the top actually really, I think, does a good job of depicting the view that's shared with the pavilion right now. And it's pretty incredible. A couple of things I do want to point out though, you can see the kind of access path south of the pavilion that's tying into the southwest corner of the playground. And it sort of just ramps down basically like a curb cut into the existing playground play pit, which is sort of a engineered wood fiber. And there's limited, access kind of around there. I mean, I think there are 2 panels of concrete. There's really no option for turning around if you're in a mobility device, and there's no seating whatsoever. So you can see the curb that kind of contains the play surface does run around the entirety of the play pit, but it's fairly limited otherwise. And shade is again provided by the existing trees on the southeast, but otherwise it's very open. There's turf around it, but limited seating. So the first question we'd like to talk through is, what do you like or dislike about the current playground? Sort of what's working, what's not working.
Great feedback. Just keep putting your comments in the chat.
Clement Park is beautiful. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great. Todd, do you wanna kind of walk through some of what you're seeing?
Yeah, I can do it. So yeah, there was a reference to Robert Clement Park that Brittany mentioned as well in Littleton. Possibly other comments about making it larger. Things, some of the issues are graffiti control as well. see, we'll keep going through. Yeah, more seating for parents kind of watching their children, and then kind of being thoughtful at the height of walls. Sounds like there were unfortunately an incident where a nephew or an individual or child fell off a wall. And then, yeah, there's another great comment at the end here about think about how you designed the playground so it has different areas for different age groups, for bigger kids and smaller kids as well. And then everyone, I think, in all the parks we work on loves swings. Never gets old.
It's nice as they're some of the more affordable equipment options, I would say too. It's just space consuming.
There is a comment there about a basketball court, although we haven't heard that before. So that's great feedback.
Yeah, Todd, I think there's also one, would it be possible to add a splash pad section? I don't think we've heard that one yet either. Oh, and other great ideas, acoustic play or musical instruments or other interpretation like chimes. Yeah, all good ideas here.
Yeah, great feedback.
So then,
oh, sorry. One thing to interrupt. One person just asked, "What is a splash pad?" It sounds great. So a splash pad is like a small, softer area where there's basically small little water jets where water kind of pops up and the children are able to kind of splash around in it. The other way Denver Parks has been doing it lately is also they put little kind of creative hand pump areas in their park so the children can manually hand pump those as well, and create kind of channels and things like that and have interactive play for younger children as well.
Oh, and then Renee actually just commented you could do bocce ball or bocce courts, not as in demand as pickleball, but pickleball would make the park crazy. That's pretty accurate.
Ditto on bocce, love it.
Yeah. Okay, this is fantastic. Thank you all. So the next question, and again, I think you all were sort of jumping ahead a bit, which is great. What types of play should be included in the new playground? So this could be, thinking about age groups. This could be obviously the comment on swings or courts or just different types of opportunities to be active and safely play.
While everyone's answering that, can I jump in and answer a question about the rose garden that was asked? So we had a question, can the existing rose garden be expanded upon? So we actually had really bad luck with the Japanese beetles, and they absolutely decimated the existing, it's really not an existing rose garden anymore. So that's an issue that we're having to deal with across the board in a lot of parks. And it's how we deal with Japanese beetles, but they just love roses. So that's going to be a tricky one for us to figure out going forward. Sorry, Renee.
More good feedback on the idea of a playground for younger and older kids. An idea for a jungle gym big enough for older kids. Even the oldest of children, adults. Thoughts there about slides and swings as well. There could be a way we've talked about having a slide maybe integrated into the hillside possibly. So we'll look at options like that as well.
Yeah, and I think expanding on comment that also came up earlier, I don't recall who mentioned it, but with the existing retaining wall, I think that one thing that we're looking at are ways to integrate and kind of embed sort of play and or the structure itself into the grade, such that it kind of uses the natural grade for seating and or can kind of minimize the actual level of retention as well. So you don't have 4 foot. I think that current wall is around 30 inches, but it isn't well marked. And the grade from the pavilion actually, which is kind of this gently rolling turf area, then just drops off where the wall is. So I'm not surprised to hear that there been or was an incident there, if not others.
Yeah, in addition to the rose bush comment, there was a recent comment about the potential cherry blossom trees where the roses would be great, which is an indication that there's an interest in some flowering species, either trees or bushes or shrubs as well. There's a question there, maybe Will or Brittany want to answer. Is there a bathroom there? I think there's only a porta potty now. I believe that's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's currently a portalet.
Yeah, and Brittany, I think that Parks has sort of, based on the size of the park and the demand criteria for when a true restroom facility is warranted. Is that correct? And maybe you can kind of expand just on that.
I was actually looking at the DPR restroom master plan today for another project. So we do have all of that identified. By and large, we want to make sure that there are plumbed restrooms at regional parks. Loretto Heights is a community park. So I do not believe it's on the list, but I can verify that. But most of our parks are serviced with portalets.
All right, and then there's another suggestion, good one for binoculars for sightseeing and take advantage of that view. Another great suggestion. More native plants with potentially some educational signage related to the plants and the species in the water use as well. Wonderful.
Awesome. All right, and I obviously continue to put some thoughts and ideas in there. Let's look at the next prompt and we'll kind of continue to monitor. Should the new playground be close to the shade structure? And while you're responding to that, Renee also mentioned more public art. And I think with some of the existing, pathways and even the entries, there are a lot of opportunities. So that's something I think we're also starting to think about, and that's really great to hear that there's an interest.
We will have also 1% of this project going to public art, so there will be some as a result of this project.
Thanks for clarifying, Brittany.
Yeah, great suggestion about a mural area that maybe can rotate. Now that would be something different than the 1% for public art, probably, but something I think we could also think about. Yeah, great feedback on the location of the shade structure in proximity to the playground. So the good thing is that, we'll talk about it, and Brittany as well. We'll come back with some options next time. And I think definitely that's one area where we can look at those, look at different locations of the shade structure in proximity to the playground.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting because I think Ray actually did a good job of summing it up. It kind of depends on what is the playground and what is the shade structure itself, and what are the supporting kind of seating and other kind of amenities that are co-located with those. But I think that question is going to be a pretty big driver as we're in sort of the alternatives phase that Todd just mentioned, where we'll be looking at the relationship between those as well as to the entries themselves, and then opportunities again for if play is further kind of sort of embedded into the grade and has, potentially have the actual slope become a play surface, or there could be opportunity for slides or landings. I think was also a comment mentioned in the chat. There are a lot of opportunities there to really work with the site and kind of make a really memorable play and park experience,
All right, another great comment there about maybe they are close together but not connected, so parents can still and caregivers can rest in the shade while watching the kids, but they're not directly connected.
Excellent. No, this is really great feedback. So we'll move from sort of now we'll kind of talk about the existing vegetation. We don't have any prompts with that, but then what we'll do is we'll sort of talk about the next steps in sort of the community engagement process and the project schedule itself. When the next or when the survey will close, when the next survey will occur, when the next public meeting, and then we'll have a question answer session as well. So any additional questions or comments, that you would like to kind of talk through, please place them in the chat, and that could happen anytime between now and sort of the close. So this next slide is looking at really mapping the existing landscape sort of vegetation zones and really kind of with an environmental or ecological overlay. So what's shown in sort of the like apple green is the existing turf area that's really, as we understand and from just observations on site, a well-used lawn. This is the main space that you can go and you can play Frisbee or you can run around, and there's a fairly consistent slope to it. So that seems to be a fairly sacred element. What's shown in the sort of darker green adjacent to it is one of the landscape typologies that actually DPR, Denver Parks and Rec, now has in their system of kind of defining when it's not a recreational lawn. It's called bluegrass forested. But I think we wanted to really highlight this and also tying into, I think, Renee and Shokai's comments on maybe there's opportunity actually kind of integrate new planting or convert some areas. So there's a big initiative, Every Last Drop, that Denver is trying to kind of move forward with, which is really just being thoughtful about. Obviously, we're in a water scarce region, and we have an environmental responsibility to really focus our energy and resources in strictly the spots where it matters, and then actually, look to convert landscapes and try to maintain more naturalized landscapes for the environmental or habitat or whatever benefit. So the bluegrass forested area, I think, is a great opportunity that we're going to look at as we kind of update the irrigation system and kind of look at these spaces and the pavilion and the playground. Also looking at, well, do we need to irrigate all of this? Does it all need to be turf, or are there opportunities to kind of better stitch together and weave sort of the naturalized park spaces with the more formal kind of turf and recreational areas within the site itself? So I think that there are other opportunities as well, just in the idea of connecting sort of the north naturalized prairie area with the kind of main center section of the park, the high point, and that's through thinning. And I think a couple of you identified that in the chat. And I think we just want to be careful as we're talking about this and just trying to be accurately say that we're not suggesting to clear this entire area by any means, but actually provide intentional thinning sections in which more clear sight lines would be provided. But that I think the other point is understanding that as sort of a thicket right now, there is actually a wildlife benefit. And if you go out there, actually right now, as we've got a lot of robins and, our birds are becoming more active here in the spring, you can see a lot of activity there. So when we're talking about this, we're really talking about being thoughtful and, providing clearings and breaks that, again, connect the spaces, but still allowing some of that naturalized like thicket in a way to express itself in certain areas. So hopefully I articulated that clearly, but by no means are we suggesting to clear the entire site. There are some existing cottonwoods here that will decay over time, and we want to be thoughtful about succession or replanting. However, we're not talking about clearing the site.
If I can just add a little bit to that too, Will, we're
Yep.
working in detail, very closely coordinating with our forestry department on this irrigation ditch and the entire park too. So it's very top of mind. And the urban canopy is a very valued asset for us. So we'll definitely have lots of conversations going forward about that in the succession plan for the park.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany. So as I mentioned, any additional questions that you have, let's kind of place them in the chat now. And we have a kind of window here, I think, where we can sort of talk through that. And then we'll just highlight the sort of next steps in the process and when our next meeting is. So.
There is a great question from Councilman Flynn here about the native areas abutting private homes' backyards. Brittany, so I don't know if you can address that about can there be a buffer area behind the fences in which homeowners can mow a strip to keep the risks away from their fences? I think he indicated that Parks put out a policy notice after the Marshall fire saying they can cut down up to 3 feet away, and just wondering if it could be greater than that, potentially 6. So I don't know if you have any input on that one, Brittany.
So I don't know a whole lot about like what was sent out regarding after the Marshall fire. I haven't seen that myself personally, but I can work with the operations staff, and I do believe that we could extend that, but I don't know for sure. So I want to make sure that we can go forward, but I know that's a concern for a lot of those homeowners. So this is just kind of the northwest sort of side where that really comes into play. And so I think we'll definitely take a look at that. And we want everyone obviously to feel safe in the park. So and be able to control what is immediately outside of their property. So let me get back to you on that.
Great. There was another question here earlier about, will the entire park be closed during construction, or will it be done in zones and stages? And that one, I think it's too early to tell, Brittany, correct? I mean, we will, as we get deeper into this process and actually get to a design with community's input and get to the technical drawings and all that, we will kind of outline through that process what parts would likely be limited access during construction. And so we don't fully know right now, unless Brittany, you have any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that's correct. We certainly want to look at construction access has already come up as part of this project, because anyone who's visited the site recently knows there's some beautiful rows of trees that come from that main vehicular access on Lowell. So from the west side, that is the primary vehicular entrance. However, that would not make a good construction entrance. So we're going to work through exactly how that happens, and we'll have a plan ahead of time and be able to communicate that to the public.
Great. There's another comment here. Is there an environmental impact assessment in the design process, and will the assessment be published online? There is not, I don't believe, Brittany, an environmental impact assessment
No, there's not,
in this process.
because it's not required, I should add.
Yeah. I will just kind of tack on to that though. As part of our consultant team, we have a consultant and a group of ecologists actually who are, once we kind of move a little further into the concept phase and transition into final design, they will be through, site visits and sort of field assessment, helping us design and tailor, seed mixes and, improvements to the naturalized areas such that they support, proper diversity, but also, a more resilient landscape. So it's not strictly monoculture. So I don't know if you were getting at from a waste perspective or if it was in regards to planting, but just wanted to add that. And then I do actually, I think it might be the same author, but there was a note about 10 minutes ago. Is there a neighborhood group that volunteers to pick up trash in the park beyond what the Parks Department does already? And I don't know the answer to that. And Brittany, maybe you do, but it also, I know we had, as part of the steering committee, some pretty knowledgeable neighborhood members who we could follow up with on that.
Yeah, all I know is about our DPR trash collecting services. I don't know about anything in addition to that.
Okay. Let's see. There's a note on, is there a steering committee or advisory committee? How does one get on it? I don't see anyone here from Harvey Park. Anna Claudia, we do have a committee, but maybe you can talk through sort of the process, kind of in the, it's already a defined committee, but how the makeup of that committee came to be.
Yeah, sure will. So we put together a community advisor. It's like a centric on community people that live around the park and key stakeholders. We reached out to City Council for nominations of the steering committee members, and we already had our very first meeting, and that was an excellent interaction, very productive meeting with a lot of good feedback. And we definitely enjoyed that close contact with the community. And the function of this community is mainly to help us to do an outstanding community engagement. So we have utilized their connections with the community to expand our reach for the public meetings, also to get really good insights on users' viewpoints and really get us prepared for this public meeting. So we are very appreciative of everyone's time and involvement thus far.
All right, great. Do you want any other questions? If not, we can move on.
I see one other one that I think we can address. Do the decisions about a new or additional street crossing hawk signal involve a different city department? And that's actually a great question. So when looking at, and we sort of previewed that connection from the campus on the east at Irving Street, that actually would be a separate project. And Brittany, I know that you were going to do a little bit of digging on sort of the timeline for that. I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but yeah, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so we've DPR has reached out to DOTI, which is the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, to coordinate with this. We also are coordinating with the consultant who is currently working on the campus design. So luckily, this little world of landscape architects is very small. So we are very tightly coordinating with those folks and actually have a meeting this week about it. So we definitely want to make sure that this connection works in the best way possible for this park, and that our construction is under coordination as well. So, but that is very top of mind for us as well. And we're working with both the consultant and DOTI on that, and the developer. I noticed someone else had a question about native plants. I just wanted to kind of chime in a little bit on that. We are working with our resiliency team as well and trying to identify some funding that can be allocated for native and some kind of resiliency scope. So we are actively trying to work that in as well.
And I think there also is another comment on the crosswalk on the west side with Lowell. Just to clarify there, I'm assuming, are you talking about the southwest crosswalk? And you can unmute yourself, Renee, or drop it in the chat. I just want to be clear so we're understanding observations.
Yeah, if you can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so basically the concern is anybody who, a lot of people go to that park from the Amherst side, from where Amherst comes and intersects with Lowell. Not only do you have to cross that intersection, or that T really, that is blind to almost both directions, because people coming from Dartmouth up your way can't see you around that curve, and people coming from down the hill can't see you from around that curve as well. Now, I understand the reason why we have the hawk signal up at the top of the hill so that everybody goes up a hill, takes the crosswalk at the top of the hill. But if you've got a stroller, if you're elderly, there's a family in our neighborhood that is literally pushing their son in a motorized cart. It's very difficult to get to that top of the hill sometimes. And so I honestly believe that we could have, two crosswalks, one at the top of the hill and then one at least even just lines, sprayed lines at the T at intersection between Lowell and Amherst, because crossing down there is bad, and going up the hill to the crosswalk at the top of the hill isn't always easy for everybody. So I just think it needs to be looked at, because especially if we're going to be encouraging more and more people to go to this park, it's that cross area at Amherst is easier for almost the entire west neighborhood than going up that hill. Just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. That's great insight, on the ground insight. Looks like Ray agrees as well. And Todd, did you or Councilman Flynn, did you want to kind of highlight your comment as well?
Excuse me, you mean about the flagpole?
Yes, correct.
Thank you, Will. A local veteran, actually, he's in still active duty. He's the head of the ROTC up at CSU in Fort Collins. And he lives in Sharon Park, I believe, right next to the park, or near the park. And he noticed, as many have, that there's a flagpole in the park that's not had a flag flying from it for many years. When I asked the Parks Department about it, Scott Gilmore told me that, of course, flag code demands that the flag not fly at night if it's not lit or spotlighted. And the Parks Department doesn't have personnel who would be equipped to go out and raise the flag every morning at dawn and lower it at dusk. So that pole has been standing there empty for many, many years. And he proposed that a local veterans group could sort of adopt the pole if we could find a way to keep it lit at night. Of course, it'd be very expensive to put permanent underground spotlights in the ground that would uplight it. But I did some searching and I found the availability of solar powered LED spotlights that could be mounted high enough up on the ring of the flagpole that it couldn't be vandalized or damaged in any way by anybody on the ground. And then the local veterans group would take care of maintaining the flag, replacing it when it was tattered, that sort of thing. So I told him I would pursue that with the Parks Department. I just wanted the group to know about that option. If that pole's not going to be used, we should either fly the flag or take it out. So that's where the suggestion originated. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilman Flynn. Perfect. And yeah, on lighting, a couple other observations on dark spots throughout the park, and then I think that's also just to kind of add on to the thinning and being careful with the naturalized areas. Having sight lines actually would help to kind of allow some of the light that is out there to extend further and to provide better lighting at intersections and along paths and whatnot. Perfect. So I think this is great feedback, and we're really excited in terms of just the potential for this park, and it's rare to have a site with such opportunity. Again, the views, the topography, and such a passionate community too. And I think that really has become quite evident through this discussion and the very considerate and thoughtful input that you've provided. So we really appreciate your time and just want to make sure that is really highlighted. So I think first off, just want to kind of summarize the process here. So we're currently in concept design. Your input today, as well as on the survey, which we'll talk about in a second, is going to be instrumental as we develop then concept alternatives. We will then come back in May, on May 17th, and we will look at alternatives, and there will be a second survey in which you will be able to vote and provide input on those, and then that will inform sort of the preferred concept design that will be advanced into final design and construction. So it's an exciting time for this project, and we really appreciate your involvement today, and hope that involvement is continued so that we can kind of see this process through together. So I did kind of touch on the next public meeting on the 17th. We do, I think there was a question about the steering committee itself, but we do have steering committee meetings that occur prior, which that group helps to navigate and help prepare sort of for the conversations that we bring forward to the group as a first pass. So lastly, the survey, as I mentioned, closes on May 3rd. So we'll post the presentation here as an ADA accessible document, and we'll include the survey link within the presentation. It's also available on the project website. And I think Todd actually, yep, great, just dropped it in the chat. So again, please fill out the survey. Your input is critical at this point in time, and then as we move forward. And really looking forward to seeing how we can shape this park together. So with that, Brittany, I don't know if you have a couple thoughts and you want to sort of close.
Yeah, so just thank you everyone for your awesome participation in this meeting. Thank you for hanging in there when we had a little bit of technical issues in the beginning of the meeting. So thank you for sticking with us, and just your input is absolutely invaluable. You guys know this park better than we ever could, we do now, and hope to, but so thank you everyone for your input. The survey will be open for 3 weeks from today. And Councilman Flynn, I saw your comment there too. we designed it so we have kind of 3 weeks for the survey to be open and then 2 weeks for us to kind of collaborate and prepare before our next meeting. And since that's already set, I don't know if we can extend it beyond the 3 weeks, but we could certainly take a look at that and get back to you.
I'd appreciate that because my newsletter goes out the first Thursday of each month. And they give a lot more people the opportunity to know that the survey exists. So please give that a lot of consideration. Thank you.
And folks, please keep us updated, the Registered Homeowners Association, if it does get extended longer.
Okay, thank you, Ray.
You bet. Sorry.
Well, with that, again, we really appreciate all of your time and thank you so much for spending your Tuesday evening with us. So everyone have a good dinner and enjoy your family time. All right, thank you all.
Thank you all.